All right there, everyone. Newly released polls show that Marine Le Pen is now more popular than French President Emmanuel Macron. That's what we'll be talking about on today's video. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to our brand new viewers. If this is your first time here, I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events and some really awesome conservative trends. So if you would, please smack that bell and subscribe button. We are in the final countdown to 100,000 subscribers. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as one of them. All right, well, things just keep getting worse and worse for French President Macron. Not only did his attempt to buy off the Yellow Vest protesters with billions of euros of giveaways, not only did that attempt fail miserably, not only does it appear that his political future is in tatters and that the globalist vision that he has for Europe, a shattered dream, now his 2017 political rival, Marine Le Pen, is polling consistently higher than Macron. Macron's been in basically a political freefall for weeks, okay? His approval numbers have tanked under 20%, 18% in the most recent poll. Now, keep in mind, Macron had dipped below 20% already at one point in September. It dipped to about 19%. Bloomberg reported back then that 4/5 of French voters, that's 4 in 5, okay, disapproved of his presidency. So Macron was already remarkably unpopular going into these demonstrations and protests. The media would never tell you that, but now it just seems like the protests have nailed his political coffin shut. I mean, look, think about it. Macron's approval rating has been consistently lower than his predecessor, right? François Hollande. And Hollande was the most unpopular president in the whole of the Fifth Republic, okay? So needless to say, perhaps the only person happy about Macron's failed presidency is François Hollande. All right. Now, of course, Marine Le Pen is wasting no time here. She made a recent statement that Macron needs to stop cloistering himself, right, shutting himself away, hiding in his presidential palace, and get out and actually see the damage that globalization is doing on the people. And in turn, he needs to provide real answers to real suffering and provide real solutions to very real globalist problems. What's really neat here is that Le Pen sees Macron's speech precisely as we interpreted it. In our last video on this, we know that all Macron was doing was trying to buy off the protesters. And in so doing, he was trying to buy back his own political future. Macron still thinks they're a bunch of thugs, and thugs can be bought off. And of course, he's trying to buy them off, keep in mind, with other people's money, right? Not his own. But you'll notice Macron demonstrated that he had absolutely no intention of slowing down the globalist enterprise that he's planned for France and the whole of Europe. He has no plans of changing course. He did not admit in the least that his globalist reforms for France were disastrous for tens of millions of his citizens. And so all he's really trying to do with the Yellow Vest protesters is just throw a few euros their way and hope they shut up. So Le Pen sees it exactly the same way. She knows that Macron failed to admit the shortcomings of his political course and that his supposed concessions were just a strategic retreat on his part. Again, it's all about buying back his political future. Le Pen noted that Macron refused to admit that his management model is being challenged. That is his model of excessive globalization, unfair competition, widespread and unfettered free trade, massive immigration with its disastrous social and cultural implications. This speech was nothing more, Macron's speech, nothing more than a strategic retreat. Macron, the globalist, will be back to fight another day, make no mistake. Now, unfortunately for Macron, the societal winds, as it were, are thoroughly in the sails of Le Pen. And I think Le Pen recognizes this. I think she recognizes what Italy's Matteo Salvini recognizes and what Viktor Orban of Hungary recognizes and Andrzej Duda of Poland recognizes and Andrej Babis of the Czech Republic and Austria's Sebastian Kurz and Heinz-Christian Strache and the AfD of Germany, and we can go on and on. They all recognize that the political and economic forces are moving in a nationalist, populist, and traditionalist direction, not just in Europe, but indeed throughout the entire world. Everywhere we look, center-left and liberal leftist globalist political parties are collapsing while the nationalist right is rising. We talked about this in other videos. The Tony Blair Institute's report on European populism that came out at the end of 2017 documented the results of 946 European districts that held political elections last year. And in 94% of the 946 districts, in 94%, the center-left coalitions lost. They lost 94% of those elections. Let that hit you. The center-left lost 94% of district-based elections held in just a single year alone. The New York Times has had to come out and admit that the center-left parties in Europe are basically going extinct. In many parts of Europe, they're not just in retreat, they've actually practically ceased to exist. Pew Research has recently corroborated this finding, but looking at it from a much more longer trend perspective, Pew researchers concluded that the trajectories over the last 20 years all point to the fact that virtually every single center-left party throughout Western Europe is collapsing. Here's just a sampling here. In Germany, the Social Democrats have fallen from 41% in 1998 to 21% today. They've literally been cut in half. In Sweden, the Social Democrats have fallen from 36% in 98 to 28% today. In Denmark, the Social Democrats there have fallen from 36% to 26% during the same time period from 1998 to 2018. In Finland, the Social Democrats have gone from 23% of the vote in 98 to 17% today. And perhaps most dramatically, we have the virtual extinction of the center-left in the Netherlands. In Geert Wilders' Netherlands, the center-left Labour Party has gone from nearly 30% of the vote in 1998 to today barely getting, if you can believe it, 6% of the vote. But in the midst of all this data, guess which nation proves to be one of the most dramatic in terms of the collapse of the political left? Come on, you can take a guess. I'll let you take. Did you say France? Well, what do you know? The same Pew Research found under the disastrous presidency of François Hollande, the Socialist Party in France went from 24% to barely today 7%. And may I remind you, Macron is polling significantly lower than Hollande ever did. So there's no question France is ready to turn. It's ready to reject the globalist politics of the center-left and embrace a stark alternative. And again, all the evidence points that that alternative is the nationalist populist right. 95% of French think all people living in France should be required to learn the French language. 80% of French believe that sharing the nation's cultural heritage is essential to being a part of the national community. But they also increasingly recognize that elites like Macron don't care. They don't care about France's nationalism and traditionalism. And that's why 78% of French believe that their government does not care about them or their political concerns. And that's also why support for Marine Le Pen has been growing. Back in 2012, when she first ran for president, back then her support among voters under the age of 25 was around 15%. In 2017, it jumped to 40%. Support among young French women in particular jumped from 9% a few years back to over 30% in the last election. We could keep going and go. The most reliable political demographic for the center-left has been the working class, right? The factory workers, the industrial workers. Guess who was the only demographic that voted overwhelmingly for Marine Le Pen in 2017? I'll let you. Did you guess the working class? You're right again. Wow. All the political currents are moving in the direction of the nationalist populist right. Now, if that's the case, and if France joins Italy in embracing the nationalist populist right in the near future, with an increasingly right-wing turning Germany, folks, it's over, okay? It's all over. The whole globalist superstate project, the EU, is officially over. It's done. So while Macron is trying to buy his political future back, Marine Le Pen is riding the waves of the new nationalism sweeping over Europe and indeed the rest of the whole world. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click on our Patreon, PayPal, and now our new Subscribe Star links below and become a supporter of this channel. And as you know, we are periodically demonetized by YouTube, and we could really use your help so we can continue to analyze current events in light of awesome conservative trends so that you can personally and professionally flourish. God bless.